It was the kind of morning where the air felt just a little too still, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The sun had barely risen over the quiet suburban street, casting a soft, golden hue across neatly manicured lawns. Birds chirped lazily in the trees, oblivious to the storm brewing just beneath the surface. For Alex, it was supposed to be an ordinary day. But as he stepped outside to grab the morning paper, his gaze fell upon the envelope lying on his doorstep. The paper was white, pristine, with a single line of text across the top. Homeowners Association Notice of Violation. His heart skipped a beat as his eyes quickly scanned the document. It claimed that his backyard fence, a simple, sturdy structure built within the regulations of the HOA, was a violation of some obscure rule he had never heard of. The letter demanded he remove it immediately or face escalating fines. But that wasn't the part that sent a cold shiver up his spine. It was the tone. The sharp, legalese-laden language made it clear that this wasn't just an ordinary warning. This was a declaration, a threat. And Alex could feel it. A chill that had nothing to do with the morning breeze creeping up his spine. There was something personal about this, something off. He frowned, confusion and frustration battling inside him. He had followed the HOA's rules to the letter when installing the fence. In fact, he'd received approval from the association before even breaking ground. So why now? Why had they suddenly decided to come after him? As he stood there, still gripping the letter, his mind raced. Could this be a mistake? He turned it over, scanning the back of the letter, half expecting to find a note that would explain everything. An error, a misunderstanding. But there was nothing. Just the cold, impersonal statement that his property would be subject to fines unless the violation was corrected. And yet, something about it felt off. How could they make such an accusation when everything was in order? His thoughts were interrupted by the faint sound of a car engine in the distance. Alex turned and saw a black SUV rolling slowly down his street. The windows were tinted, but he could make out the outline of a man behind the wheel. The SUV was moving unusually slow, almost as if it was casing the neighborhood. Alex's unease deepened. He watched the vehicle pass his driveway, and then the brake lights flashed for a moment as it stopped a few houses down. The driver didn't get out. He just sat there, idling. A sudden realization hit him. This wasn't just about a fence. This was something else. Something more. The moment the SUV turned off its engine, Alex's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw a text from his neighbor, James. "Heads up, man. Some guys from the HOA are going around threatening people. They're legit enforcers, not just the regular board members. Watch yourself." Alex's heart rate quickened. Enforcers. What did that mean? Before he could respond, the SUV started moving again, this time coming back up the street, and it was heading straight for his driveway. His instincts kicked in. He stepped back, his mind already forming a plan. Who are these people? And why are they coming after me now? As the SUV pulled to a stop at the end of his driveway, the door swung open, and two men in dark suits stepped out, their movements stiff, professional, and a little too coordinated. Alex couldn't help but feel the weight of their eyes on him, sizing him up as they approached his front door. The first man, a tall figure with sharp features, gave Alex a curt nod. His eyes were hidden behind dark sunglasses, but his presence alone sent a ripple of tension through the air. The second man, shorter but stockier, had a walk that seemed more calculated than casual, like he was expecting trouble. Alex's pulse quickened. This wasn't just a nuisance. This was a warning. And something told him that today, his life was about to take a turn. Just then, he noticed something that froze him in place. A faint glint of something metal reflecting the morning light in the shadow of a nearby tree. His eyes narrowed as he recognized it. A rifle scope. A chill ran through him. Who was watching him? And more importantly, why? Alex stood motionless in the doorway, the sudden awareness of eyes on him setting his heart into a furious rhythm. The two men from the SUV were now walking toward him, their faces unreadable, their presence oppressive. But as Alex's gaze flicked nervously to the tree line where he had seen the flash of light, his mind raced. The glint of the rifle scope was still there, and the unsettling feeling of being watched intensified. His instincts screamed at him to move, to react, but he couldn't afford to give away the advantage. The tall man, the one with the sharp features, reached the bottom of the steps first and stopped, looking Alex up and down with a dismissive air, as if he were sizing up a potential problem. The shorter one, stockier, moved to stand just behind him, his arms crossed, a quiet menace in his stance. "We've come to discuss your fence," the tall man said flatly, his voice smooth, as though delivering bad news over and over was part of his daily routine. His tone was calm, but there was something calculated beneath it, something rehearsed, like a predator waiting for its moment. He pulled out a thick envelope and handed it to Alex, who took it, though his hands felt numb, his mind still tangled in the mystery of the sniper watching from the shadows. Alex scanned the envelope quickly, but his eyes couldn't focus. He could feel the weight of the moment, the creeping pressure of something larger than a mere dispute over property. These men weren't here to simply enforce a rule. They were here for something else, something more sinister. "You've received a notice about your fence," the tall man continued, stepping forward, invading Alex's personal space just enough to make him uncomfortable. "You've been in violation for some time now, and we're here to make sure you comply. The HOA takes these matters very seriously." His voice was eerily smooth, as if the words had been carefully chosen to lull Alex into submission. Alex gritted his teeth, refusing to back down. "I've already complied," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I've got the permits, the approvals. I've followed the rules." The man's lips curled into a cold smile. "That may have been true at one point, but it's irrelevant now." He paused, his gaze narrowing, as if calculating Alex's reaction. "The HOA doesn't take kindly to defiance, and neither do we." Alex's stomach twisted. The threat was unmistakable, but there was more to it than just intimidation. Something about the way the man's words lingered in the air made Alex's blood run cold. Defiance. It felt as though the stakes had shifted, as though the fence was just a pretense, a way to draw him out. He could almost hear the unspoken message. This wasn't a small matter anymore. This was personal. Before he could respond, the stockier man stepped forward, his eyes scanning the property with sharp, calculating movements. "Your neighbors are complaining," he said, his voice low and guttural. "They've already given their statements. You know what that means, right?" Alex's mind raced. Complaints. He had never had a problem with his neighbors. At least, not any that would involve these thugs. The more they spoke, the more it became clear. This wasn't about property violations. This wasn't about the fence. There was something deeper at play. His instincts kicked into overdrive as his eyes flicked to the trees again, searching for any sign of movement. The sniper, whoever they were, hadn't made their presence known since the first shot, but the tension was thick in the air, and Alex could feel that something was about to break. The tall man saw his gaze and followed it, a knowing smirk creeping across his face. "You don't need to worry about your friends out there," he said casually, almost as if reading Alex's mind. "They're not going to save you, not from us." At that moment, the ground beneath Alex's feet seemed to shift, as though the world had tilted just slightly, and he wasn't sure whether he was standing on solid ground anymore. His mind flashed to Cody, the sniper in the shadows, waiting for the signal. Could Cody see everything? Before Alex could respond, the stocky man reached into his jacket, pulling out a tablet and flipping it on. The screen flashed for a moment before displaying a list of names, addresses, and detailed reports. Alex's name was front and center. His heart sank. "These reports," the man said, his voice tinged with satisfaction, "are evidence of your continued defiance. Do you know what happens when someone repeatedly challenges the authority of the HOA? His smile was cold, predatory. We take matters into our own hands. The words landed like a hammer. Alex's stomach tightened. The more these men spoke, the clearer it became. The HOA was just a front. There was something bigger at play, and it had to do with power, control, and possibly something even more dangerous. Alex stood frozen, his thoughts racing. He had never been a man to back down from a fight. But the stakes were higher than he could have imagined, and as he met the eyes of the men standing on his doorstep, he knew that the game had only just begun. The air between Alex and the two men felt thick with unspoken threats. Every word they spoke seemed to carve the air more deeply, like a blade being drawn slowly across flesh. Alex could feel the weight of their gazes, calculating, predatory. His fingers gripped the edges of the envelope so tightly that his knuckles ached, but he didn't dare show weakness. The tension crackled like static in the air. Still, Alex knew he was outgunned. These men weren't just a part of the HOA. They were enforcers, an arm of something darker. But they didn't know everything. They didn't know about Cody. His thoughts were interrupted by the stocky man's next move. He glanced around the yard, his eyes scanning every corner, every shadow, looking for something or someone. "Your neighbors will be talking to us soon," the tall man said, his words clipped, as though each one was a threat in itself. "If you know what's good for you, you'll comply. This doesn't have to get ugly." Alex's mind was racing, but his face remained a mask of cool defiance. He took a step back, just enough to move toward the side of the house, pretending to consider his next words. Inside, his pulse was pounding. The sniper was out there. Cody was out there. Alex had known he could count on him. But now, it felt like the real fight was about to begin. As he moved, the stockier man's eyes followed him. Suspicious, but not yet suspicious enough to make a move. Alex's steps were slow, deliberate, but the second he turned the corner, he broke into a sprint, rushing toward the backyard, to the farthest corner where his security system was hidden. Behind him, he heard the sound of footsteps following, but he didn't dare look back. His breath quickened as the sharp realization hit him. If they're following me, they know something's up. They're closing in. He reached the corner of the house, his hand fumbling for the small hidden panel in the wall. His fingers brushed the sensor, and the familiar red light blinked on. He punched in the code. Inside his house, the system hummed to life. Within moments, the screens displayed multiple views of the property, every angle of his yard and street now in high definition. The sniper's position was clearly visible, hidden among the trees near the edge of the property, a dark figure blending into the shadows. Alex's breath caught for a moment. It was Cody, his face obscured by the scope, unmoving, patient. For a second, everything seemed to freeze. He could see the men from the HOA standing just a few yards away, still unaware of what was watching them. Cody's got them locked in his sights. Alex didn't need to say anything. He could feel the tension building between them, an unspoken understanding between old friends. They were here to intimidate, to push him, to take everything. But he wasn't going down without a fight. His fingers danced over the security system's interface, adjusting the settings. The cameras around his house began to zoom in, taking precise snapshots of every angle. He could see the men's every move now, their faces, their postures. But there was still one problem. The lead enforcer was too close to the back door. If they're going to make their move, it'll be soon. Alex knew the next few seconds were crucial. A slight shift in the trees caught his attention. Cody's silhouette moved ever so slightly, adjusting the scope, preparing for the shot. Alex's heart thundered in his chest. He was seconds away from making the call. If I give him the signal, this will change everything. Suddenly, the tall man's voice sliced through the air, his words cold and biting. "I don't think you understand, Mr. Dawson," he said, his tone sharp like a razor. This isn't a negotiation. We're past that. You either comply, or we'll handle things another way." The threat hung in the air like poison, suffocating any hope Alex had of reason. But Alex wasn't listening anymore. His fingers hovered over the button, and the thought of what might happen next filled him with a mixture of dread and anticipation. Cody was his secret weapon, his silent protector. He had trained for moments like this, when there was no way out, when survival meant taking matters into his own hands. But then, just as Alex was about to press the button, the stocky man made his move, reaching into his coat with a swift motion. Alex's eyes widened. What was he pulling out? The man's hand closed around a piece of paper, a new set of documents, likely more threats or false accusations. Alex's mind went blank for a moment, but the clarity was instant. This is it. This is the moment. He knew what to do. His hand shot out, pressing the button on the security system. The camera that was focused on the enforcers instantly zoomed in on the stocky man's hand, capturing every detail of the motion. It's time. The man pulled his hand out from his coat, and just as Alex's finger hit the final command, the camera feed blinked, and Cody's shot echoed through the air. The sniper had fired. But it wasn't a kill shot. It was a warning. A single bullet fired into the ground, just inches from the stocky man's feet. The enforcers froze. And Alex? He took a deep breath, knowing this was only the beginning. The sound of the rifle shot echoed through the crisp morning air, shattering the tense silence like a glass breaking. The bullet whizzed past the stocky man's feet, kicking up dirt and gravel in a cloud of dust that seemed to hang in the air, frozen in time. For a split second, everything went quiet. The stocky man's eyes widened, his body stiffening in shock as he glanced down at the ground where the bullet had struck. His hand flew to his side, as if instinctively reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. The tall man beside him was already moving, his posture shifting from predatory calm to something more primal, more defensive. "What the hell?" the stocky man hissed, his voice thick with confusion and fear. He looked around wildly, as though searching for the source of the shot, but it was too late. They were already being watched, closely, silently. Alex could feel his heart pounding in his chest as he stood at the corner of the house, hidden from view. His mind was spinning with the gravity of the situation. Cody's shot had done its job. It had shaken them. But what now? The tall enforcer took a step forward, his eyes narrowing, scanning the trees with slow precision. "Who's there?" he demanded, his voice no longer the cool, calculated tone it had been before. It was edged with a cold menace, the kind of tone that made the air itself feel oppressive. Alex didn't move. He didn't dare. He could hear the unmistakable sound of the stocky man's breath quickening, his unease palpable. The tall man was now fully alert, his posture tight and ready for a fight. They knew they were being watched, Alex realized, but they still didn't know where the threat was coming from. In the silence that followed, Alex allowed himself to breathe, just for a moment. The element of surprise was still in his corner. The stocky man slowly drew a handgun from beneath his jacket, his fingers trembling as he did so. His face was flushed with anger, but there was something else there too, a deep-rooted fear. "This isn't over," he muttered under his breath, though his words lacked the usual conviction. They were hollow, desperate. "We're not backing down." But Alex had no intention of letting them get any closer. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to take action now, to press his advantage. The enforcers were rattled, but they were still dangerous. He couldn't let them move forward. Not while Cody had them in his sights. The tall man was now making a slow, deliberate circle around the yard, clearly searching for any sign of movement. Alex could hear the crunch of gravel beneath his boots as he moved. His eyes locked on the shadows beneath the trees, the place where Cody was positioned. "Don't let them move," Alex thought. "Just keep them distracted, keep them from realizing where the danger is. Whoever you are, show yourself." The tall man barked, his voice rising in frustration. This isn't funny anymore. But Alex wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. Not yet. His eyes flicked back to the security monitors, and he watched as the enforcers slowly spread out across the yard. They were too close now. They were about to cross the line. One more shot, Alex thought. Just one more warning. He reached for his phone, his fingers moving with practiced ease. A single text to Cody, simple and direct. Now. The sniper's reply was immediate, calm, composed. On it. As the tall enforcer moved closer, still scanning the trees, the stocky man raised his weapon, his eyes wild with fear. He wasn't thinking clearly anymore. He was reacting out of instinct, fighting to regain control. But Alex knew it was too late for them. The enforcers had miscalculated. They had underestimated how far Alex would go to protect his home. Suddenly, the rifle crack rang out again. This time, the shot was closer. The bullet didn't miss. It skimmed the top of the stocky man's shoulder, just enough to draw blood. He yelped in pain, stumbling back, his hand instinctively clutching at the wound. The tall enforcer spun around, eyes wide with disbelief. "Get down," he shouted, pulling his colleague to the ground, shielding him from the direction of the shots. But even now, it was too late. The sniper's position was too good. They were already cornered. Every movement, every step they took, was under constant observation. Alex's voice rang out sharply, cutting through the chaos. "I suggest you leave. Now." The words landed with the weight of finality. The tall enforcer stood frozen for a moment, his eyes flicking between Alex and the trees, where the danger was lurking. His jaw clenched, his muscles taut with the realization that they had no control here. That, for all their bluster, they had never been in charge. "You think this is over?" The tall man snarled, his voice full of venom, his face twisted in rage. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Alex didn't flinch. He simply took a step forward, his voice cold and resolute. "I know exactly who you are. And you've just made a big mistake." With that, the tall man and his partner hesitated, caught between rage and the chilling knowledge that they were outmatched. The sniper's aim was unwavering, and Alex's presence, though calm, was like an anchor that pulled the ground out from under them. The enforcers exchanged a tense glance. Without another word, they turned and bolted toward the SUV, their previous bravado replaced by hurried, panicked movements. As they sprinted down the driveway, Alex's eyes stayed fixed on them, watching, waiting. They didn't even look back. For a moment, there was silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. And then, with a deep, controlled breath, Alex stepped back from the yard and allowed himself a brief exhale. But the fight wasn't over. He knew this was just the beginning. The sound of the enforcer's footsteps faded, but the tension in the air remained, thick and suffocating. Alex stood still in the yard, his mind spinning with everything that had just happened. The tall man and his partner had retreated, their hurried steps taking them back to the safety of their SUV. But Alex knew this wasn't over. It was far from over. As the enforcers disappeared around the corner, Alex's eyes moved automatically to the trees, to the dark shape still hidden in the shadows. The sniper, Cody. Alex could feel the weight of Cody's presence, even though the man was out of sight. He knew Cody was there, watching, waiting for the right moment to act. It was a bond formed through years of unspoken trust. But now, Alex needed answers. He needed to know who was really behind this, who had sent these men, and why they were targeting him. It's not just about the fence, he thought. It's something bigger. His fingers hovered over his phone for a moment, and then, with a quick tap, he called Cody. The phone rang once, twice, and then it was answered. No words were exchanged immediately, but the silence between them spoke volumes. "Did you see everything?" Alex asked quietly, his voice steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. "I saw enough," Cody replied, his voice low and deliberate, like a man who had seen too much in too little time. They're not just a couple of HOA goons, Alex. These guys are connected to something far worse. The words hit Alex like a cold slap to the face. Something worse. Who are they working for? Alex asked, his voice tight with urgency. Cody paused for a long moment before answering. I don't know yet, but I'm digging. You're not dealing with some rogue HOA enforcers. They're part of a larger operation. I've seen them before, and trust me, they're not the kind of people you want to piss off. Alex's heart raced as he processed the information. He had suspected it, of course. The way the men had acted, the way they had pushed him so hard, so quickly, it was all too calculated. But now he had confirmation. He wasn't just fighting for his property. He was fighting for something much bigger than that. I don't want you involved any more than you already are, Alex said, though he knew it was already too late for that. Cody was already in this, whether he liked it or not. Cody's response was quick, cutting through the tension. I'm not going anywhere, Alex. This is just the beginning. You've made yourself a target, and we both know it. But I'll make sure you don't have to face this alone. Alex's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. We need to know who's pulling the strings. They didn't just send these guys here for nothing. This is a warning. They want something. Cody's voice took on a more serious tone. I'll find out who's behind this. But you need to be ready. They're going to come back. And next time, they won't be as easy to scare off. Alex's gaze flicked back to the house, his mind racing with possibilities. He had always been a fighter, always ready to stand his ground. But this was different. The stakes were higher than he could have ever imagined. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about something larger, something that had already reached out and touched his life in ways he couldn't fully comprehend. As he hung up the phone, Alex took a slow, deliberate breath. The air around him was still, the sounds of the world outside his property muted by the weight of the situation. He knew the enforcers would be back. They were only regrouping, recalculating. And the next time they came, they wouldn't be so easily deterred. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the yard, but Alex didn't feel the usual calm that evening. The shadows seemed darker now, more ominous, as though something was lurking just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. And yet, in the midst of that growing unease, Alex couldn't help but feel a flicker of determination. He wasn't just going to let these men walk all over him. Not now. Not when he knew there was a bigger force at play. The game had changed, and Alex was about to play it on his terms. But he would need to be patient. He would need to be strategic, because the men who had come to his door were only the first wave in a battle that was only just beginning. With a final glance at the empty driveway, Alex turned toward the house. He had a feeling that things were about to get a whole lot more dangerous, and he would need to be ready. The house felt quieter than it had in days, the stillness almost suffocating. Alex moved through the living room, his footsteps muted against the hardwood floor, his mind locked in a relentless spiral. Every corner he turned, every shadow that shifted in the corners of his vision, seemed to hold the promise of something darker. The air around him seemed charged with the kind of tension that you could only feel when danger was stalking just beyond your reach. He paused in the hallway, his eyes scanning the pictures on the wall, family memories that once seemed so simple, so safe. They didn't fit here anymore. Not in the world he'd suddenly found himself thrust into. This wasn't just about property lines or petty disputes with neighbors. This was something bigger, something far more dangerous. The enforcers had been just the beginning, and Alex had no doubt that there was much more to come. He glanced at his phone. No messages from Cody yet. The sniper was out there, still gathering intel, still looking for clues. Alex trusted Cody, but a part of him felt like they were already too far behind. The enforcers were connected to something bigger. Someone powerful was pulling the strings. He just needed to figure out who. Alex's fingers tightened around the edge of the counter as his mind raced. Who would go to these lengths? He had lived here for years, never involved in anything shady. He had no enemies, at least none that would go to these extreme measures. He thought about the men, their cold, calculating eyes, the way they had spoken to him like he was nothing more than an obstacle. They had a purpose. They wanted to break me. But for what? His phone buzzed, breaking through his thoughts. The message from Cody was short, to the point. I found something. Meet me in 10 minutes. Bring the usual. The usual. That meant one thing. Cody was ready to talk, and it was time to gear up. Alex's heart skipped a beat. Whatever Cody had uncovered, it was big. Too big to ignore. He moved quickly to the back of the house, his footsteps silent as he opened the hidden closet. Inside, the cool metal of his gear greeted him like an old friend. It wasn't much, just a few essentials. A concealed handgun, a tactical knife, and the radio. He didn't plan on using any of it, but it was better to be prepared. Better to be ready than caught off guard. With everything in place, Alex grabbed his jacket and headed out the back door. The evening air was cooler now, the scent of fresh-cut grass, mixing with the faintest hint of danger. As he stepped into the darkness of his backyard, his eyes instinctively moved to the tree line. Cody's sniper nest was well hidden, the trees thick enough to provide excellent cover. But tonight, Alex wasn't just relying on Cody's watchful eye. He felt the weight of the situation more than ever. This wasn't just a personal fight anymore. It was a war, a battle of wills. And Alex wasn't about to lose. The night was eerily quiet as he moved through the trees, his senses heightened, every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves, setting him on edge. Focus, he reminded himself. One step at a time. It wasn't until he reached the small clearing where Cody had told him to meet that he allowed himself to exhale. The sniper was already waiting, crouched in the shadows, the barrel of his rifle just visible against the moonlight. Cody straightened as Alex approached, his expression unreadable. You ready for this? Cody asked, his voice low, barely a whisper in the night. Alex nodded, his jaw tight. Tell me what you found. Cody reached into his bag and pulled out a thick folder, the edges frayed from repeated handling. He handed it over without a word, and Alex flipped it open, scanning the contents. His eyes widened as he processed the documents inside. Names, addresses, a web of connections that tied the enforcers not just to the local HOA but to a network of shady businessmen, corrupt politicians, and even more dangerous individuals who operated far outside the law. The more he read, the clearer it became. This was no random act of intimidation. They were trying to force him into something much larger, something that would put him directly in their crosshairs. And then, there was a name that stopped him cold. Victor Larkin. The name was circled in red ink, connected to everything. Real estate deals, illegal land acquisitions, bribes, threats, everything. Larkin wasn't just some criminal. He was the kind of man who ran entire operations from behind the scenes, pulling strings that reached far beyond the neighborhood. Larkin. The name sounded familiar, but it took Alex a moment to place it. Then it hit him. The mayor's office. It was all coming together now, and it wasn't pretty. We're dealing with someone bigger than we thought, Alex said quietly, the realization sinking in. Larkin's pulling the strings. He's the one behind this. Cody nodded grimly, and he won't stop until he gets what he wants. This is just the beginning. You've got a target on your back now, and it's only going to get worse. Alex's fingers clenched around the folder, his mind racing. Then we need to make sure he knows we're not backing down. Not now. Not ever. Cody's gaze met his, and for the first time, there was a flicker of respect in the sniper's eyes. I'm with you. All the way. The weight of the discovery sat heavily on Alex's chest as he walked back toward the house, the folder in his hands a reminder of just how deep he was now entrenched in this mess. Victor Larkin. The name sent chills down his spine. It wasn't just a name on paper. It was a symbol of something much darker, something that had fingers in every part of the town's underbelly. And Alex had just stepped right into it. The night was thick with an eerie quiet, not a single sound from the usual nocturnal creatures. It was as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable storm to hit. Alex paused at the edge of the yard, his eyes scanning the darkness once more. The enforcers had retreated, but he knew this wasn't the end. They'll be back. They'd regroup, plan their next move, and come for him again. And this time, they wouldn't hesitate. The house loomed ahead, its windows dark, the shadows stretching across the porch. As Alex stepped onto the front step, his phone buzzed in his pocket. A message from Cody. They're on the move. 2 black SUVs coming down the main road. They're not wasting time. Alex's heart skipped a beat. So soon. He didn't waste a second. With one swift motion, he stepped into the house and moved toward the security room. The monitors flickered to life as he entered, casting a faint blue glow over his face. He accessed the live feed from the yard and the street cameras, watching intently as the black SUVs appeared on the screen. The vehicles were moving fast, their headlights cutting through the dark like knives through silk. "Damn it," Alex muttered under his breath. He wasn't ready for another confrontation. Not yet. He needed more time, more intel, more leverage. But Larkin and his men weren't giving him that luxury. The SUVs stopped in front of the driveway. The tall enforcer, the one who had been most vocal, stepped out first, followed by the stocky man. The two of them were joined by 2 others, larger men who immediately moved to flank the driveway, scanning the property with predatory precision. Alex's pulse quickened. He had seconds to make a decision. Should he confront them now, force the issue, or try to get the upper hand by waiting for Cody's signal? The sniper had made it clear. This battle was more than just about survival. It was about sending a message to Larkin. A message that Alex wasn't some easy target to be crushed underfoot. He quickly typed a message to Cody, the words coming out faster than he could think. "Get into position. Now." No reply came, but Alex knew Cody was already in place. He trusted the sniper implicitly. Still, the sense of vulnerability clawed at him. He was exposed here, no longer behind the walls of his house but out in the open, with 4 armed men standing between him and safety. He needed to think fast. Without hesitating, Alex grabbed the remote control and switched the security feed to the house's exterior cameras. A plan began to form in his mind, an idea that could give him just enough of an edge to outsmart them. He knew the layout of his property inside and out. If he could use the yard's natural obstacles, trees, the garage, the stone fence, he might be able to get close enough to use his handguns without exposing himself. Alex grabbed his jacket and slipped into the shadows, moving with deliberate stealth. He had no intention of letting these men think they had the upper hand. As he crept toward the back of the house, he saw the enforcers begin to spread out, methodically working their way toward the property's perimeter. They were looking for a way in, looking for any sign of weakness. The seconds felt like hours. Alex's hand gripped the cold metal of his gun as he crouched down behind a garage, watching the enforcers through the small crack between the building and the stone wall. The tall enforcer was closest, moving toward the fence, his rifle scanning the area with deadly precision. Alex could almost feel the tension in the air, the anticipation of the moment when one of them would cross the line and make a fatal mistake. And then he heard it, a faint rustle from the trees behind him. It was Cody. The sniper had found his vantage point. Alex's heart raced. The timing had to be perfect. If he made one wrong move, it was all over. He could feel the sweat beginning to bead on his forehead, his breath shallow as he adjusted his grip on the handgun. This is it. This is the moment. Suddenly, the sound of the enforcer's footsteps grew louder, and Alex's eyes locked onto the tall man as he rounded the corner of the garage, dangerously close to where Alex was hiding. Everything inside him screamed to act, but he held back. every muscle tense, his body as still as stone. And then, as if by divine intervention, a shot rang out from the trees. The enforcer stopped dead in his tracks, his body jerking forward, blood blossoming across his shirt. He stumbled back, a surprised gasp escaping his lips. The other enforcers immediately dove for cover, but Alex was already moving. His body reacted without thought, instincts kicking in as he sprinted from his position. Gun raised, eyes locked on the remaining men. The game had begun. And this time, it wasn't just about survival. It was about making sure that Larkin and his men knew they had underestimated him. The first move had been made. Now, it was time to finish it. The crack of the rifle shot still rang in Alex's ears as he sprinted through the yard, adrenaline surging through his veins. The enforcer who had been hit didn't make a sound as he crumpled to the ground. Blood pooled beneath him, soaking into the earth as his body lay still, but the other three weren't so easily intimidated. The tall enforcer, now bleeding from the shoulder, growled in frustration, his hand clutching at the wound as he scrambled for cover behind the stone wall. The stocky man and the other two were already moving, circling the yard, their eyes scanning for any sign of Alex. They were good, too good, but they weren't prepared for what was coming next. Alex knew he had to stay one step ahead. The game was shifting. He wasn't just on the defense anymore. He was moving into enemy territory, and it was time to strike back with everything he had. His eyes flicked to the garage, where Cody's shot had come from. The sniper was still in position, but Alex didn't know for how much longer. There was no time to waste. He could hear the other enforcers moving, closing in from every side. His pulse quickened as he darted behind the shed, his mind racing through the options. He needed them to come to him. The sun had long set, and the yard was bathed in a haze of shadows. But Alex knew every inch of this land. The old oak tree near the corner of the yard could provide the perfect vantage point. It was big enough to cover his movement, and if he could get into position, he'd have the upper hand. He wasn't sure how much longer Cody could keep up the fight. His sniper was a master of precision, but they were vastly outnumbered, and that alone was a problem. If Alex didn't act now, things could spiral out of control fast. The stocky enforcer appeared at the edge of the yard, his gaze sweeping across the ground. The light from his flashlight caught Alex's eye for just a moment, a flicker in the dark. This was it. Alex moved fast, his footsteps barely making a sound as he darted behind the oak tree, his back pressed against the thick trunk, his eyes scanning the yard through the gap in the leaves. He could see the silhouettes of the remaining enforcers in the distance, just out of reach. They were closing in on his last position, on the garage. He could feel the tension building, the air thick with anticipation. They were on edge, desperate to corner him. But they didn't know where he was yet. One more move, Alex thought. Gritting his teeth, he adjusted his stance, his hand gripping the cold steel of the gun tighter. Then he took a breath and let it out slowly. Another shot rang out, a sharp, precise crack that shattered the silence. The tall enforcer, who had been trying to make his way back toward the front yard, suddenly collapsed, his body jerking violently before he hit the ground. The other enforcers froze. They were on high alert now, searching frantically for the sniper's position. Alex didn't hesitate. He broke cover, running low across the yard toward the now vacant side of the property. The stocky enforcer swiveled toward the direction of the noise, but before he could react, Alex fired a shot of his own, quick, clean, and right on target. The enforcer dropped to his knees, his hand clutching at his side, but he didn't make a sound. Alex kept moving. There was no room for hesitation now. As he cleared the edge of the property, he saw the last enforcer, the largest one, standing in the driveway, rifle raised, his eyes searching the yard. He hadn't seen Alex yet, but it was only a matter of time. This was the final play. Without a moment's thought, Alex leaped behind a low stone wall that divided the driveway from the yard. His gun was ready, his finger on the trigger. He was close now. The large enforcer took a few steps forward, his boots crunching against the gravel. Alex's heart hammered in his chest as he waited for the perfect moment. Just a little closer. And then, with the slightest shift in the man's body, Alex made his move. He fired, the shot ringing out with a deafening crack. The enforcer stumbled back, his rifle slipping from his hands as he dropped to the ground, the force of the bullet knocking him off his feet. For a moment, there was only silence. Alex's breathing was ragged, his chest heaving as he looked at the fallen men scattered across his property. The driveway was eerily still, the hum of the world outside the yard muted by the weight of the moment. He couldn't afford to relax yet, but he allowed himself a moment to collect his thoughts. Cody appeared from the shadows a few steps behind him, moving with the quiet grace of a ghost. He gave Alex a small nod. "We're clear," Cody said, his voice as calm as ever. "Larkin's men are down, but it won't be long before reinforcements show up. We've got to move." Alex's eyes scanned the scene, the gravity of what had just happened settling in. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. Larkin would want revenge. The enforcers wouldn't be the last people to come after him. But for now, for this moment, Alex had won. He wasn't just fighting for his property anymore. He was fighting for his life, and for the lives of those he cared about. The battle wasn't over, but he was ready. "Let's go," Alex said, his voice steely with resolve. And with that, they'd vanished into the night, ready to face whatever came next.